If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.
When the scouts came and said, we're going to draft this Delaware guy in the first round, and
just watching their excitement, that kind of fascinated me. Just watching them say, we've got a diamond in the rough, we've got a guy, we don't have to pay up, we don't have to give up our whole draft to go up and get Matt Ryan at 2. Because that's what it would have taken. In order for us to get him, we knew Atlanta was going to take him at 3. We would have had to give up basically the entire draft and next year's 1 in order to get Ryan. And they convinced me that Joe's ceiling was as high. Maybe because he hadn't played with the same level of competition, that his bust potential might have been higher than Matt was the guy. He was the first quarterback that was going to be taken on everybody's board. But I don't think Joe was the second quarterback that was going to be taken on everybody's board.
This is a fascinating business, just picking quarterbacks. I mean, when you consider the Tim Couches and the Ryan Leafs, and everybody's afraid of making that mistake.
Right. I mean, I've been in this league long enough to see Tim Couch and Achilles Smith and Jamarcus Russell and a few others that didn't.
And Kyle Bowler that didn't work out for us.
Yep.
Roger Goodell. There's another decision that I'm sure you had a vote in to bring him in, and this sort of last year wartime, this year peacetime, the Saints rulings and all that. He's becoming an incredibly influential guy. When you consider 5 years ago, nobody knew who he was, right? I mean, he was just one of the guys in the league office. He gets the job. He instantly becomes the face of the league. I can't imagine that you, as owners, could have made a better choice.
No, we couldn't have made a better choice. And we hired an outside search firm, and we interviewed 5 candidates, and there was just not the level of comfort that we had in Roger. And when I got into the league years before, I saw Roger as the commissioner in waiting. I thought that we would just appoint him, and then when Paul announced his retirement, then obviously it was the prudent thing to do to hire a firm and go out and interview some candidates and compare them to each other. But I would say that half the ownership was already pretty sold on Roger, and it was just a matter of comparing him to other outside people. And one other inside person, Greg Levy, who's a brilliant lawyer, and he really blew us away in those meetings back then. He emerged as kind of a dark horse candidate, and I think he got the second most votes. And then, it's kind of like the Super Bowl thing. One drops out, we re-vote. One drops out, we re-vote. And then I think it came down to Roger and Greg Levy. And Greg's still with us and doing a bang-up job.
But Roger, behind the scenes, when you were a minority guy, when you first came into full ownership, was he a guy you knew and was around? Was it just very easy to know him?
Yeah. Because, Paul had been there forever. So I was just one of, I was a new owner. I wasn't in full control. And Roger and I just hit it off. So, like, if I had a question, I have to tell you, I would call Roger, not Paul. Not that Paul was disrespectful in any way. It was just he was kind of entrenched and busy with his things. So it was easier for me to call Roger and bounce ideas or suggestions off him.
Little known fact, he was a bat boy for the Baltimore Orioles. Did you know that? Roger Goodell? You didn't know that?
No, I didn't.
I didn't know that till he told me.
Yeah.
He saw me wearing Baltimore stuff. He said, I was an Oriole fan. I was a bat boy.
I didn't know that.
So I got to talk to him for my book about that. Who's been your, I don't say best friend or closest confidants, mentors in this ownership group? Because it is, every time I'm here at the owners meetings, I see it's such an exclusive circle. Everybody made their money in different ways, and completely different philosophies about how they hire, how they treat their fans, how they treat the media, how they treat sponsors. Who have you modeled the Ravens most after, or has it been an amalgamation of different people?
I don't model them after anybody. You can't, because then I would be forcing myself to try and be somebody else. But you can just take the Rooneys and the Crafts and the Joneses and say that I would like to have their success. So if there's 3 teams that I try and pick and choose things from, those are the 3. Those are my 3 closest.
Ravens going to have an out of the country game at some point. I know nobody ever wants to get on the plane and go to London or wherever it is, but from your perspective,
With that hair, it looks like a Japanese thing.
so Ringo. This is Ringo, I think.
Yeah, but the young Japanese, they do a lot of that spiky colors. Maybe we'll go to Japan and do that.
But what do you think of that? I mean, it's from a league perspective, to see what the NBA's managed to do. I mean, I got off a plane in Beijing 5-6 years ago. It was nothing but NBA. I mean, and I went looking for an NFL game. You talk about Tokyo. It's funny you make fun of me. The night we lost in Pittsburgh.
Did I make fun of you?
Yes, you did. That's all right. You're allowed to make fun of me. Everybody else does. The night we lost to the Steelers, the awful rain game, I watched that game in Tokyo, and I watched it on this laptop because I couldn't get it anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I was shocked.
Yeah.
In Japan, you couldn't find football anywhere. Hong Kong, you couldn't find football anywhere. Yet
Right.
the NBA was...
But 6 years later, why would anybody even worry? Because everybody's got one of these. So it is there.
Oh, it's everywhere.
there to be had.
No doubt.
Right. So expanding our game and showing it to other countries, it gets our foot in the door. It gets them. It gets us on their radar, and it's a slow process. But you don't want to turn around 30 years ago and say, "What the hell were we doing? We didn't even make an effort."
Right.
So whatever we get 30 years from now, it will be good because we've made the effort. We tried to stretch the zone.
Labor peace. What has it meant for you, for the league, in August to get that relief? And now that it's behind you, I guess you can't enact any plans or get anything done until you have that. So
Right.
the league was kind of, in a stall mode for 2.5 years, waiting to see what's going to happen there. I guess these meetings are exciting for what's going to happen over the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I mean it's really nice to have the TV partners and our players in long-term deals that we can now focus on growing revenue. We've got our splits. We've got our models to share the revenue. We've got great, obviously great TV partners, and so now it's about getting back to the business of football and revenue generation, which is football. We want these players. I want these players to make more money. If they don't, I don't. So, we're all in alignment, and that's a good thing.
Where do you see that coming from, other than raising ticket prices for fans or raising, fees for networks? Where is that going to come from? I mean, some people just think, how could the Super Bowl be any bigger than it is, or more successful than it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that.
Well, you're a big markets and commodities guy, and you know about that. There is a ceiling. It can only, it's not infinity.
I think we're at it.
You do.
Yeah, in other words, I don't think there's any more rabbits to pull out of the hat. You build new stadiums, you create a better experience for your fans, you sell more tickets, you sell more sponsorships because we're sold out. We're very fortunate. I mean, we're the only small market team on the entire, Northeast corridor. And we're fighting against teams like Washington and Philly and the 2 New Yorks and New England.
All well established.
And huge markets. Multiple millions of residents where we have 1.3 million. And yet we're filling out our stadium. We're selling our sponsorships and we're filling out our suites. And, I couldn't be happier. Our goal is to continue to develop a good product so that our fans can be proud of it, so they love coming and experiencing that Sunday afternoon.
If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.